Take on me, and who I'm taking on now at the moment, it is Ian McDonald, the Director of Literature and Art of the Edge Festival, and also Deb Winter, storyteller, is joining us here this morning. But we're hopefully going to get Peter with us as well. A very good morning to you both.
Good
Hello.
morning. Morning, Deb.
Hi.
Hello there. And Ian, I'm going to come straight to you first because you are the Director of Literature and Arts for the Edge Festival. It's coming up at the end of the month. What does it mean to you having this festival come back and with such a literary and arts emphasis?
Well, thanks, Tom. It's great to have the festival back after obviously a very strange 3-year break. And it's also good that we're putting a bit more effort into the literature, the performing arts side of it, because we have two storytellers this year, Deb Winter, who's with us, and Peter Stevenson, who's about to join us. And that's going to have an extra edge to the festival. I think it's been poets, it's been prose writers, but this year we have storytellers as well. Not that we neglected. So we have two poets on the Saturday, and we have two prose writers and poets coming along on the Sunday as well. They'll be performing after Deb has spoken in her morning slot. So for me, it's great to get a shoehorn another talk in on my speciality, which is architecture and the arts, I should say.
Architecture and the arts, and we're gonna come to you in just a moment. But first, I'm just going to introduce Peter live on the radio. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Bonadar, and many apologies for being late.
No problem at all. You're live on the radio right now, and we're just talking to Ian, who's introduced the festival, and also he's just mentioned there about architecture and the arts. So, Ian, you're talking in the clubhouse on the Saturday morning. What is it about architecture that makes people tick and about performance?
I'm not sure people know. I'm hoping the talk's going to give them food for thought. I think a lot of buildings perform. There are some wild and wacky buildings out there, and we all perform as well. And the city or the town is the backdrop to our performance. But I think also ultimately some of the best cities perform as well in the way that they show themselves off to people. So I'm going to be doing that with example. I hope I've worked in architecture in Britain and in Central Europe, worked in Berlin for several years and worked in South Asia. So I have examples from Central Europe, from Germany, from India, and from, say, Japan, countries like that. So I hope it's going to be a big broad sweep, and it's going to show how cities perform in all those kind of areas.
That's fantastic, because cities are always evolving and changing, and we've got our very own city at the north of the county in St David's. I know that you haven't mentioned that as one of the cities that you've looked at, but how does a small city like that perform?
Well, St David's has got an enormous reputation to live up to. Such a tiny city, and of course, then it is the city, and it has a cathedral, and it has this amazing history where it used to be a pilgrimage site. People came from all over the world, all over the Christian world, and St David's was deemed to be, I think, half. 2 trips to St David's were the equivalent of a trip to somewhere like Rome, that kind of thing. But you also have to remember, St David's performed in a completely different way, and people came to the city by sea mostly, certainly not along the A487. And they would come by sea and they would make their way in. If anyone walked the coastal path around St David's Peninsula, as you come back into the city, you get a completely different view. And of course, you're overshadowed by the cathedral rather than the cathedral being down a strange hollow as it is. When we used to have the B&B here in Solway, you do get occasionally that thing of people say, well, we got to St David's and we didn't know where the cathedral was. And that's because it's falling down in the dip. And they have to go down to find it, and then you have to explain to them that it's down in the dip to keep it away from the Vikings and the salt-laden winds coming off the sea. And so it has really two different places, two different performances, St David's.
That's fantastic. That is fascinating. If that's not an insight as to what we can expect on Saturday morning, I don't know what is.
I'll have to put St David's in the talk.
You're going to have to. Peter, moving to you, you're also going to be in the clubhouse on that Saturday morning. Borida, very good morning to you. And I was just reading about, well, all the different talents that you have. What is it that we can expect from you on that Saturday morning in relation to the Boggarts, Trolls, and the Tylwyth Teg?
Well, I must admit, in my life as a storyteller, I'm not always sure what it is I'm going to talk about. I think in this case, I'm very specifically going to talk about the last book I wrote, which is Boggarts, Trolls, and Tylwyth Teg. It's folk tales of hidden people and lost lands. I've spent a lot of my life kind of gathering stories from around Wales, folk tales. I was kind of brought up with this when I was much younger, and I've written a few books about this now, and of course I've travelled around, and I've branched out travelling internationally, and I have a lot of contacts in the Appalachian Mountains, in America, on the West Coast, New Zealand, following these kind of links between Welsh storytelling, Welsh folktale, Welsh history in different countries. And of course, it's all linked in with colonialism. And, the stories are fascinating as soon as you turn them round. We've done a lot. There's a lot of research been done here in Wales about the Welsh stories from the Welsh perspective. But we don't always look at how the Welsh were perceived by people who were already living in the lands before the Welsh moved in, and with other countries as well. So I got to a position. This was kind of just before the lockdown started. I'd been talking to my publisher about doing a book of stories about the Welsh overseas, but from the perspective of the cultures that they moved into. And I hadn't really got much to go on from this, other than my own kind of travels and my own research. So it's a travel journal told through folk tales. It literally goes around the world to different places where I've had personal connections with the storytelling communities, the art communities, the political communities, the educational people, but also following people from the past, other people around these places, going to places where there have been strong Welsh connections. Having said that, I've probably missed out the most famous one, the Patagonian connection, simply because it's so well written about. I've done a lot of work in Appalachia, where there are just enormous Welsh communities there, but also working with the descendants of the enslaved people in that area, and also native people. And yeah. I really like these kind of connections. So you're able to tell the story through a different pair of eyes. And that's my storytelling. I'm not necessarily telling a story through my eyes. I'm looking at it through a different pair of eyes, which is a slightly odd approach to storytelling, which is a very personal thing. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'll be talking about.
That's what we're talking about. But you raised a good point there. Like, these stories have traveled around the world during colonialism. A lot of people just think British. But of course, part of that British is that you've got this Welsh culture. You've got these Welsh individuals. There is a very large Welsh influence on the world wherever you go around the world. There's a number of Pembrokes over in America, for example. And it's amazing that these stories do have links in other parts of the world because we were a nation that sailed on the sea. It's fantastic that there's these themes that resonate everywhere.
Yeah, it's true. I've actually, I may well talk a little bit about this, another book which is due out this summer, which Deb has been a great help with as well, and has written a whole section of the book for me as well. But there is, you talk about these connections. It's a book specifically about Abergwaun, about Fishguard, and about the fibbing tradition there, because the tradition of storytelling in Abergwaun is about tall tales, telling stories for as long as you can without people quite understanding whether you're telling the truth or not. Very relevant to our political situation at the moment. But there is an extraordinary story about a man called William Battine James, who was connected with Pencaya and Dinas. And when he was in his early 20s, he left for America. He joined the army over there. And he ended up being the only Welshman who died at the Battle of Greasy Grass, the battle which people here know more as the Battle of Little Bighorn. Now, I've kind of written a story here about how he comes back as a ghost or as a wraith back to Wales, where he ends up in Pembroke Dock watching Buffalo Bill's Wild West show in 1904. And Buffalo Bill genuinely did come to Pembroke Dock at that time with people with at least one man who was fought at the Battle of Little Bighorn, at the Battle of
Wow.
Greasy Grass. So you get these extraordinary connections as soon as you start looking at this from another perspective.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so we're talking geography, we're talking time, and to the beginning of time, we head over to Deb Winter, storyteller as well. Deb, you're going to be in the literary tent on the Sunday. You've got two stories, but there's one in particular that you want to mention this morning.
Yes, this story leapt into my mind partly because it's the Edge Festival, and this story starts. I'm doing my own trailer here. This is a story from the white edge of the world. So, like Peter, I like telling stories from all around the world. So this is from what people would now think of as northern Canada, and it's an Inuit story. And I mean, what interests me is telling stories that show we're all the same under the skin, in the same sharing the same human emotion. So I'm drawn to stories that's about the powerful human emotions of love, of jealousy. It's got loss, it's got betrayal, it's got transformation. And also, I'm really inspired by nature. So all my work will have a really, it's the wind, the ice, the rock, the sea. These are the things that inspire me. But also, I'm really like to take a very old story, an ancient story, and weave in, our concern for what's happening to the planet. So expect a little of that too. But weaving the ancient and contemporary concerns together is something I'm sort of doing increasingly. And I do want to say, if you ever are in the situation where you're going to be stuck in a lift or on a desert island, try and get stuck with Pete, because you would never know a boring moment. That man is made of stories,
That's amazing. And
walk in the hills together, and he just, he's a storyteller on stage. He's a storyteller every moment of the day. So we're going to have some fun.
That's brilliant. And fundamentally, we're all storytellers. We've all got a lived experience. We've all got perceptions on things around us. And Deb, you just mentioned there that you can use storytelling to help increase awareness of the plight of the planet, for example, and you're keen in doing that. But one thing before we run out of time is that you're very keen to stress that storytelling isn't just for children, is it?
Oh, goodness, no. And that's what sometimes I say, I'm a storyteller. And they go, oh, what age children? Oh, no, adults. We're telling stories in theatres, arts centres. We're addressed. It's powerful stuff. People love stories, whatever age they are. So certainly my set's very much aimed at the adult audience.
Fantastic.
If you've got a heart, you'll enjoy it.
There you go. And I think I can vouch for most people here that we've got something beating in our chests that give us a bit of sentiment. I'm so excited to hear from all three of you over the Edge Festival. Ian, back to the director of literature and arts at the festival. Where can people find out more? Because there's more speakers, there's more storytellers. Where's the place to go?
We'll go to the website, which is www.edgefestival.co.uk. You'll be able to see a full lineup, a little bit of information about Peter and Deb, myself, as well as all the bands that are appearing. We have 4 other speakers, 2 poets and 2 prose writers. They'll be appearing on Saturday and Sunday, respectively, a little bit later on in the day. So that's the place to go, and the place also to go for tickets, the full lineup of tickets. There are also special ticket prices for young people, 16 to 17 years old as well, I should stress.
Fantastic.
Talking about St. David's, I forgot, because I should mention the whole reason, people may not know, the whole reason we have the Edge Festival in Solva at all is that in 2014, Solva, the village, performed as the village in Under Milk Wood in the latest film of Under Milk Wood, the rather surreal version that was filmed in the glorious summer of 2014. So starting from 2015, with the help of Josh Phillips and Ivor Thomas, who I mentioned before, that's how the whole thing started. It began with Solva the village performing as Clarigiv the village in Dylan Thomas's Under Milk Wood. So my performing talk really will do a bit of loop and come back to that.
That's fantastic. I'm so excited. I've had a thrill to hearing from all three of you here this morning, and I know that you're going to be thrilling the audiences in the clubhouse and literary tent at the Edge Festival. Thank you so much for your time here this morning, and I can't wait to see you in person and to delve into those different worlds that you've been talking about. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks. End of this month, tickets are still available, and yeah, look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There you go. That was Ian McDonald, Peter Stevenson, and Deb Winter of the Edge Festival joining us here this morning on Early Breakfast. Tickets available. Just head to edgefestival.co.uk. We've got Traffic and Travel on the way, and then we'll say hello to Gina Jones. Sounds like a good way to finish off the morning.
Have you seen that Change for Life? It's all about small